Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Before I introduce our guest, here's a quote just for this episode. When you are finished changing, you are finished. Benjamin Franklin, our guest today, a regular on the Culture Matters podcast. Not only top in their craft, but top on the show's listings. If you haven't listened to episodes 88, 122, 154, 229, 336, 340, 433, 450, 485, 499, and 903 on the Culture Matters podcast. That's what you're going to be doing after this show today. So much wisdom and insights in and around real estate, thinking about purchasing and actually getting it done, a home, investments, investment properties. Our guest has experience in the gamut from the advisory space to investing, actually doing it, not just thinking, and all the lessons that come along the way. Bill Mervin, the not just branch manager and leader of BMT, Bill Mervin team, but and of course friend of the Culture Matters podcast, but also someone that shows by example, helps customers every day, works in the trenches with their team, makes things happen. Thanks for coming back on the show. And I was re-listening to episode 903 this morning, like 4 a.m., and thinking, interesting. Great show. So yeah, I wanted to talk about some of where we're at today from then. So yeah, thanks for coming on the show.
Always a pleasure to be here with you, Jay. So always enjoy our conversations.
That was a handful of months ago, let's say, and there were some big changes in our country at the time from like positioning globally. And there's these conversations or like sometimes the big things impact how people, everyday people on Main Street make decisions, maybe think about a home now or not, or can or can't based on economics, or are things different, or in what way are they, I guess following the quote, Ben Franklin says always changing. I don't know. So yeah, where are we today versus then as far as uh the tariff conversation, the general housing macro, our rates down to 1% again? Or were they ever that? So yeah, those are kind of the
Yeah, well, for the one who watched I will tell you, for people who watched or listened to the last one, some of this is going to sound redundant because, I think that, broadly speaking, we're in this, we're still in this kind of holding pattern. I think that the frothiness, like so macro, I think like the frothiness of 2021, late 2021, early 22 is definitely out. If you're listening to national news about real estate, you're hearing about this terrible market that we're in, um, and it's sometimes it's easy to get mixed up when you're, real estate or real estate adjacent or financing, real estate financing to get home prices, which is what the general, typical individual thinks of when you talk about how housing is doing. And then volume, which is what folks in the real estate agent, real estate, and real estate lending space, when they talk about the market and how it's doing, right? Because we are, I feel like, and I don't want to quote it exactly, but it was last year. our overall transactions was in line with like 1995 numbers, like the least amount in 30 years, right, of overall transactions. Now in much of the country, real estate valuations were supported, right, are still increasing. Now, there is some changing over that's been happening and continues to happen. There are absolutely parts of the country that have solidly flipped to buyers markets. There's just a lot of inventory, but yet there's also many parts of the country that are still very strong, right? Or at least, holding up. I think in many areas or most areas that aren't, seeing a decline in prices, you're seeing it flipped to a more balanced market from a seller's market, which we could dive into further. But the fact is that real estate valuations, while softening some in parts of the country that are have kind of specific, the areas that are pulling back are extremely expensive coastal areas. Florida, which is having some challenges with HOAs and insurance and things like that. Um, and then areas that are seeing a reverse of the COVID work from home trend, right? That just was a little bit overbaked. And the usual like speculative Vegas, Arizona areas that tend to always go blowing up and then pulling back when things get pulled back. I think those are generally the areas that are the softest. But through much of the rest of the country, I would argue that where it's a more balanced, healthier market. The problem is still remains inventory. Um, which is there's just they're not building fast enough, um, and um, and there's still lock-in effect from the low interest rates.
How is this affecting the psychology of buyers?
I mean, I can only really mostly speak to my
Like, what
marketplace.
are the questions that they're asking anecdotally?
Well, I mean, I'll just tell you. I mean, and it's been making the run in the news. Talking about the discouragement with some of the younger generation related around affordability. So, I mean, do we talk to some folks? I mean, most of the time, by the time the people reach us, they've expressed an interest, right? Do they have some reluctance? Sure. Some of them get a little sticker shock that when they start, running the numbers. Um, but the biggest camp of people, are, they don't make it to us. They're just on the sideline. They either correctly anticipate that they cannot afford it, or some of them just see the rates are up, see the prices are up, and they just are just kind of staying on the sidelines. For the people that are for the people that are out house hunting and shopping, from sellers, it's there's a lot of people pulling back. There's a lot of canceled contracts right now. Whether that's people's whether that's some of the rumblings that the market is pulling back, or whether people think that interest rates might decline, whether that's just that when you're paying the prices at the interest rates that you're paying today, whether people are more likely to get kind of cold feet mid transaction. But it's very it's a lot more. You've got to be on your toes, both a participant on the lending or agent side, or as a client, because it seems like there's a lot more times where things will break off mid transaction and you have to renegotiate inspection. I mean, I've had to deal with that on some of the houses that we're personally developing, and it's like we got the buyer, they want to close, but they keep coming back and renegotiating inspection things and things like that. So it seems like there's a lot more kind of tension in the transaction than there was. I also think that based on that volume that I mentioned, the overall transactions that are down, seeing and hearing more and more rumblings of, participants on the, again, lending and agent side about the quality of the people. I think there's some desperation. Um, so whether that equates to lenders issuing trash pre-approvals, which they kind of always do, but there's a higher incidence of them right now, due to people just wanting to kind of keep the ball, just so happy to get a deal that they want to just kind of be the yes person. Agents, um, just I think there's some people cutting corners right now, um, as well. That's another thing that's kind of going on.
What do you think the costs are to go in that direction, culture wise, for the professionals? Cost
Oh,
to the consumer, cost to the and to that.
uh, well, I mean, you're going into the heart of, what, and I've definitely gone into this in our previous conversations. What I think is at the heart of the battle for real estate and finance right now. And that's, I guess, one thing that you've definitely seen an uptick in, and since our last call, is these big mergers between lending, servicing platforms, and real estate. Right, you're in like a total arms race for data, and the ever elusive, you know, one stop shop. And I just don't believe that these big mega players can possibly deliver the expertise and the execution. I think the very, very things that allow them to create scale um, are in the way of what I think is um, necessary for good consumer outcomes. And so I think that we're in a battle between people that want to turn, I call it the Uberization of our industry, right? This is a commodity. I'm going to get the data. I'm going to be the one standing there, and I'm going to just try to, corner the market by owning the data and getting to the customers first. And then you've got, the advice driven, um, advisory approach for agents and lenders, um, that are competing with those folks. So, um, I think that there's a lot at stake for the consumers, because if that becomes the dominant model, I think that people are out there, making decisions about the largest asset that, the most folks are going to own, um, without, the right people behind them.
How about it comes to those that want to be, uh, they want to be the advisors, they want to build the value, bake the value into experience. What best practices could you share for the professionals listening on how to how to win in these times? How to look at their businesses or their rituals, and how to adapt to change.
Oof. So, I mean, there's so many ways there's so many ways I could take that question and directions we could go. But I would just say, in addition, and this is another thing, and I think I stole it from some, quote out of an industry article years ago. and that's how long this has been brewing. But I've used it before on your show, which is, there's no way around AI technology, lead capture, right? You may want to think that you can run a business, and you can still run a good business with, pure word of mouth, pure, repeat business, referral business. You do a great job. But at the end of the day, these companies are trying harder and harder and harder and getting better and better at circumventing and getting to folks first, right? So I think that you need to I think you need to focus on creating a brand, creating something that's out there in the public, whether it's social media or whatever else, that allows you to get, to be, front and center, as more and more of these opportunities maybe get cut off before they get to you. Um, and I think you're going to have to learn, you're gonna have to learn how to integrate our AI into your business, right? Like just about every industry at this point. So, that could look like a million different things. That could look like database management. It could be scrubbing, the people that you're speaking to, and helping you craft presentations or approaches that fit their personality style. These are some of the things that I'm seeing. Obviously, on the company-wide scale, cost cutting by on the operational side is huge. But my point is that it's either going to be AI and technology and humans in the back, kind of just guiding it, or it's going to be the human, the advisor, the professional, assisted by the intelligence, right? So, but there is no scenario where it's not highly prevalent and highly relevant to the customer experience of the future. So, I think don't get too far behind the curve on these things, right? Um, so those are two big things. As far as you know, knowing how if somebody already does an advisory, model, great. But I would say put yourself around, good people that, are running their business that way. Cause it's, there's a different approach, from the very first conversation to whether you just kind of, how you're presenting things to clients. I think there's a whole, approach to it that, not everybody, they might have the skill set to be able to, interact with their clients in that way, but it's not built into their process.
Hmm.
Um, so, maybe getting some support on that. And there's good resources online and YouTube with a lot of like what's his name that does mortgage coach. There's lots of videos where you can see, but also if you can get firsthand with people
I
that are
think
doing
Dave Savage.
Dave, that's the one. Yeah, he always has like the scripted palooza, I think, and all these different things where folks come on and I've learned from a lot of those guys over the years. But put yourself around good folks that are running their business that way.
I'm in Generation Z. Am I getting a 50-year mortgage in 2030?
No, you would never. I mean, no, it's. I'm a big fan of options, right? Just like the negative amortization loan from 15 years ago got really hammered, and it was often, very often, not the best for the consumer, and it was often mis uh, people pushed folks into it that shouldn't have been into it for their own selfish gain. But there was a place for that. There was a place for a negative amortizing loan. If I'm an investor and I'm trying to get my cash on cash return up, and I'm, buying, and I want to keep as much cash as possible to go make additional investments, and I understand the risk that I'm taking on, you know, I should be able to take that risk. So I'm not a big fan of preventing from options, but when you look at the difference in the payment, even if the rates were the same, is very very minimal. And then when you compound that with the fact that the rates are likely to be higher, I just don't think it's going to make a lot of sense. I think the savings will be pretty minimal.
Hmm.
And I'd also be, I think it's risky in like a 3, 5% down world because it doesn't take much. If you buy it with 3% or 5% down and then you're paying it 50 years and you're barely scratching the principal, and then 2 years from now, the market's been flat and you don't have the 6% equity to pay the commissions and you're upside down, and it smells a little like 2008.
Says that Gen Zs say they plan to buy a home. One survey found 29% plan to purchase within 5 years, about 20% within 6 to 10 years. Yet they face major affordability challenges.
If here's the thing.
Is that sound? Yeah, go
I'm going to
ahead.
dip into some controversy. But we we're not building homes fast enough. Whether that's incentivizing instead of doing a 50-year mortgage, whether that's incentivizing home buyers, home builders. I don't know what that looks like in terms of, hey, if you can build at a 300 or 400, it doesn't make sense to build a lot of these like cheaper, more affordable homes. So they've got to find a way to incentivize that. They've got builders just sitting on land, sitting on their hands. And here's the controversy. The controversy is that we've got, you know, 12, 20, 30 million people in the country um, who are competing for the housing stock, who frankly weren't supposed to be here. And you're also at the same time not building homes fast enough. So, I think that I am a big believer that, our illegal immigration challenges are exacerbating our affordability issues. I think if you cleared out a decent chunk of that, I think you would see, as homeowners with equity, I think that it would hurt a little bit because I do think you'd see deflationary pressures in housing. But I think then you'd build up from a healthier place. That you've got a lot of competition right now that I don't think should be there.
Man, that's that what a tough it seems like a bit of a predicament. Mia, from what's that saying about family? It's great to visit after 3 days. It starts to smell like fish.
No, I haven't heard that
So,
exact same, but I know what you
okay, well, I think I butchered it. This could be a clip that could really show me not in a light I'd like. But where I'm going is uh, how do you that seems like a really tough puzzle to solve for the powers that be, like you're saying, because you're talking about humans, right? Human beings with maybe the very values that it's a lot of, there's just like a lot of irony. It's like maybe the very values that we are, we aspire, what the bedrock of our culture is aspirational too, like that boots on the ground, bootstraps, pull yourself in bootstraps, core
did.
values like there's like a damned if you do, damned if you don't type conversation, it seems. And you're saying that you think that that could have an impact on the housing. You're saying there's only so much supply and there's a competition. And what does that mean for our culture if the company's competing against itself, right? When the people internally are competing against themselves versus competing against the competition. I mean, I'll use it now. If I've seen when companies go against themselves, they're not working in one as a team, which can happen sometimes when there's growth, the flux, there's change. How do you compete effectively against the competition? Who are those outside? So you're describing something where we're competing against ourselves. If it's the culture is one company and they're competing, it seems like a lose-lose proposition. It says, what damned if you do, d damned if you don't, kind of. It's what do you do other than laugh and cry if you have how many Gen Zers not leaving the parents' in one sense, I hear people say the Gen Zers not leaving the basement. In another sense, it's all these, entrepreneurial spirits, uh, played by their own set of rules, and now they're suffering the consequences because I've broken rules in my life and suffered consequences. It sucks, but I did it. I had an aim, a goal. I was trying to do something. It just seems that very if we're going to go in that direction, might as well make it as Hegelian as possible. I feel like I've obscured the conversation, but that's what rose up when I thought about what you said. It's like, yeah, you got to talk about these things, but and what do you do?
Well, then, and I'll just say, I mean, it's not popular, and it's not. I mean, obviously, you look at the results of the last election, and that was a big part of one of the, Trump who won his platform was, this, massive deportation effort, which has not really materialized. Now he's locked down the border in a major way. I mean, there's almost nobody coming in at this point, but it doesn't do anything about the tens of millions that are already here. And you can see a lot of the pushback that that they've gotten in an effort to carry it out. And people will look at that and say, "This isn't humane. This isn't, these are individuals," which is all absolutely true. The problem is like you said about damned if you do, damned if you don't. I mean, the fact of the matter is that I think the truly tragic thing was letting all of these folks
You
in the.
just gave me a realization.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think we should only have the Christians ask them to leave. I've never had this thought before. It's the perfect,
Why is that?
well, because Christ carried his own cross. If it's damned if you do, damned you don't, who's better prepared to ask? I mean, since we're gonna have this is home ownership, right? So there's home ownership, and then there's a lot of like home, right? What is home? There's levels of home. It's like home, like house, shelter, and then it's community, city, state, country. It's all home. But no, maybe this is a real solution that we came up with on the Culture Runners podcast is who better to help you? Because I was brought up the fish thing because if let's say my, relative doesn't want to leave the house, it's like really hard to get somebody to leave your house when they don't want to. I was in that situation once, not blood relative, but I had to I invited someone in my home and then I really had to get them out of there and they didn't really want to go. It was really awkward and it was tough and uh emotional and so, on like a little micro level, I think I've experienced that a little bit. But this is my proposition. Who better to solve this problem of confusion, disintegration, identity, right? Because you can clash of cultures. It's like who are all these people in my company that aren't on the pay stubs? They're coming to work, but they don't. They're not. th- th- Who is this guy? This is my org chart, and then who are all these other people? How does that confuse the business? You know what I'm saying? What do we do about this? Well, we should get the Christians to talk to them to escort them out. You know why? Because it's the perfect because how you do it is like how you do it, right? One side doesn't like how they're doing it.
Yeah,
The other side doesn't like it either, but they're like, hey, we got to do this. I don't want my this person in my home, right? The adage, if you have family, the old adage, it's like this cross-cultural in every culture people stay in your home too long, your friends become your enemies. Like, you have relatives visit and then it's like a week. Oh my God, it was like 3 days was great. Oh, I haven't seen you in a couple years. And then a week goes by and then 6 months, like, all right, it's time to get agency. It's time to go. So, yeah, that's my never before thought proposal to solve this very difficult puzzle is
Well, listen,
we
just
should
so I don't,
have the highest value people escort them out.
well,
Or
just so
at
I
least talk
don't,
to them.
I don't do, I will tell you this, right? I mean, it's quick. It's only logic that if you've got X amount of houses and you've got Y amount of people, and then scenario two, you've got X amount of houses and then you got Y plus 30 million people, right? All other things equal, that's going to make housing, I mean, a whole host of other things, but that's going to make things
100%.
more expensive. That's just how
Yeah,
supply and demand works. Now,
makes
uh,
sense.
but I will tell you, and this is, maybe something folks that might not necessarily agree with what I just shared there. While I'm not a huge fan of, I'm a pretty open markets guy, I do think that these very large rock type companies that are buying up these single family homes. I do think that that's an issue as well. I feel like while real estate is an investment, it also serves the secondary purpose, of being where people, plant their roots and have a home. And I think that, I'm not against, and I'm usually not the one of like treating companies in different categories, but I would say, because I don't also, there's plenty of mom and pop that might own 50, 100. I don't consider that significant in terms of what it's doing. But when you've got, these Black Rocks and similar companies buying up whole neighborhoods, so something along the lines of like, if you're a company with assets over X, you're not allowed to be just buying up.
This is why I invite you on this show, Bill, because we start with X and we get to zebras. And I would
Yeah.
say this is a deeply important conversation for Culture Matters podcast because it's home ownership, it's business, entrepreneurship, and it's culture. And here's my solution. This is why I'll never be a politician. I don't think I'm fit. But that's just it was we have a lose-lose. So here's the solution. And I want your serious devil's advocate or agree whatever thought.
Yeah.
We all agree, okay, this is we're overstaffed, or we're not on the same page. Well, the question is, what's the story of the company? Where have we come from? Where are we going? We have to at least be aware to have the conversation. What's the share? We could all have different ways we navigate our language and our life, but what's the shared language? Um, and yeah, what's the shared language? And then like what does it mean citizenship? It's like, well, I've demonstrated that I followed a process to be aware of the story, willing to adopt some level of language to speak, and I'm going to be part of the economic flow, like above board, right? Okay. So you get this goes back to the Christians. Why? I'm not nitpicking high or low the Christian culture. I'm saying if I understand the story correctly, that's a redemption arc. And so the Christians meet with them and they help them find, you know, the faith and give the tests, leveraging AI and, enroll them into the economic program. Because, like, what are the real issues? It's uh, a lack of integration. So what if we got everybody could now this is how do you pull that what's easier, or how long would one thing, but that's my philosophical argument of the solution so that all sides are happy. um we have the most pious that have experience, tons of experience going overseas and and emotionally, spiritually, psychologically impacting other cultures with the Holy Spirit, do that inside of this culture. And that is the front sale. That's sale one. Sale two is they, take the tests for those that pass, they come on the payroll. And now you have the best of both worlds. You got, you know, uh, well, obviously, there's probably going to be a percentage that, aren't willing to have the conversation or take the tests. Um, and yeah, I mean, at that point, yeah, okay, then that creates another obstacle that we could get to as we cross that bridge, I guess. But that's my proposition. Convert and educate, get the test. Yeah, that's it. I love your, argument for, because isn't that the big issue is like how they're doing it, right? It's like, well, of course, yeah. Who the hell would want to go through that? It's like empathy and all those things. But um,
But is it
what's your
empathetic?
argument?
There's a whole, whole sets of challenges, which is it empathy? If it isn't sustainable, if it's not conducive of, keeping our country going, does not dealing with the tough medicine of removal, does that encourage future individuals from coming? Which you can look at that and say, oh well, this is so uncivilized, or this is so inhumane. Well, is it inhumane if the whole country collapses because we don't get our financial house in order? I mean, there's all of these interesting and challenging questions. And you touched on something which isn't housing related, and as you said, we've skipped all over, which is, can you, in fact, what is America? And can you, in fact, assimilate um, that many people? I mean, at a, how many people can you assimilate in a generation or two before America stops becoming America? Now we're starting to touch on very radical ideas, right? And I'll touch on another one that maybe lead to a future conversation, but it's, we're touching the third rail here. You talk about, I will just make a bold statement. I have lost faith in universal suffrage. And you talk about civics tests you're talking right now about people who aren't necessarily supposed to be here, we'll say. But, when you look at on both sides of the political spectrum, but when you look at some of these folks that are walking around on a daily basis, um, and then you recognize that all of our fate, that those individuals have a vote that has the same weight as yours. And I wonder whether I do not believe that it's actually possible. I think it's a broken system, to be honest. So you talk about a
I
civics test and people having civics, like actually understanding the branches of government, understanding a variety of things just about America. That, I mean, I have a whole host of other things I've been working on in terms of what I think, has somebody be have to have input into what.
well, I think where this is where I think that's where the Christian piece comes in, right? Have the Christians um door knock or what have you, right? That's
We need a
that's the
revival.
secret.
I'll say
Yeah.
that.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, baby, that, and I don't even mean this to, I'm not being sarcastic. Yes, I'm not being sarcastic. Um maybe idealistic, maybe uh philosophical, but that would be my argument is that or maybe an interesting, thought or a practice. It's like how about those with the values that align with um the, turning cheek and loving the neighbor. It's like, that's a good place to test that theory. What percentage of people, because there's got to be the mixed bag, like any data set, right? Like really, really scary type, people like up to totally no good, like in any community, whether that's 4% or 10% or 12% or 13. And then there's all these others that, I'd like to think I would have been one of them probably, like just, because it's, more creative, a risk taker, depending on the circumstances. I've proven in my life that I haven't always played by the rules. I'm not saying turn empathy into empathy. Yeah, empathy and compassion can get confused, right? You also need discernment. It's like the deeper conversation. That's why I think, you know, we sh I think it's worth talk. We should do a whole episode just on this thought, this that we've been like trying to follow, because this is this is real stuff. You brought up a really interesting point of what could affect housing. Why obfuscate? And we can have a political conversation. We could also have a cultural conversation, which is more this is ideas.
Yeah, I mean that it gets because these things are so front and center. It could easily be lumped into, hey, this is political, but this is about humanity and culture and country there's so I just recognize there's some and we don't I don't think that we have necessarily time to get into it. This is like I said, I think it's a whole separate conversation. But with some of just the events of the last few months, I would say foundational things that I always believed about, systems of rule and, just, you know, the world and the country we lived in. And I guess certain belief systems that, I've started to think that, yeah, no, these are who I am or what I believe in my core. But I also don't believe that these things work. Like, and the Constitution, I think it was Adams, but he talks about that the Constitution, it was made for Christian individuals, right? Now, religious individuals, and that it's wholly, unfit to, to govern people that don't have this particular right. They had deists, they had all sorts of different folks in our founding fathers, but at the end of the day, our entire rule set constitution was still built around people that had this foundational, Christian deist, you know uh, uh, belief system, right? And now um, we're in this postmodern, your truth is your truth, and where there is no objective truth. And I no longer believe that. And this kind of touches on that concept of immigration and how it affects housing, but it's a separate discussion. So my point is that it's actually caused me, like, foundationally to
Mm.
start to deconstruct some of these things that I've always thought about and well, be willing to actually challenge things that have just been fundamental.
Oh, here's a way, maybe, and this I love this the part two. Here's how I've seen this in a business context, and here it is. Peterson taught me conflict delayed is conflict multiplied.
Mm,
So when it was one person that might have, you know, whatever was appeased to where one person could skirt around the process.
hmm
It, a penny doubled every day for 30 days becomes a whole kingdom. So now, absent, right? So in a company, not having the tough conversation, not letting the person get the chance, potentially let somebody go, not, or keep people that aren't, it, trying to do favors for people, or give it, those things always kind of, they eventually come home to roost. And when that happens, it always takes a massive lift and a strain, and it tears, right, it tears on it makes the it tears on the values, it creates more contradictions that are clear, and more hypocrisies, and more, right, because it's the longer that the longer yeah, the longer the lie is lived out, the more it grows, and the
Hmm.
more truth it takes to realign it. So if we were never in this position in the first place, how much value could have been created by maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 million humans that, weren't enticed by the value of the company, the opportunity to work for this great brand internationally, and serve, their best interests working for the company. Had they been onboarded properly, there might be value for everybody. Core values, different cultures, experiences, ideas, innovations. There's more capital flow throughout the organization. But when the employees aren't onboarded properly, the ones that don't know what they're doing, don't get trained up or coached out. When anything is permissible, it all becomes a confused disarray, and then everybody looks like a jerk, no matter what level they are in the pecking order. So it's totally relevant for business, because as an analogy and metaphors, every day this is like happens. It's part of bumping our forehead against the wall with being entrepreneurs. Is like the founding fathers, just the same. They know what the hell they're doing. They're just kind of trying to figure it out as they went too. And it's like all of our responsibility as individuals to, maybe in some philosophical sense, look past our egotism and just talk and work through it. And we're so clearly not able to do it. That's why, as a society, I was like, if I'm gonna, yeah. So that's my
Becoming more
soapbox.
entrenched because of these echo chambers with social media, and it serves up with the algorithm, people that think like you, and you're just seeing an entrenchment and this inability for folks to communicate and work through challenges. So that's a whole separate.
Oh, well, my final question though
Yeah.
to you is, for the listener, is like, final question on this is, when it comes to solving, do you think there's a connection, if at all, with solving more of the complex problems your customers face every day in your team, with like connection with the higher level problem solving, and you know even entertaining a conversation like this? Like, is there a connection? Um,
Explain. You mean, is there a connection between somebody that would have a conversation like this and also as a problem solver in business?
like do you, yeah, like, what do you, your do you th I guess it's like, all right, so I'll just share. I think what makes you great at what you do, I think, is because you like to think on all different sides of the equation, and try to come to the figure out what is really going on. And I think you do that when you work with your customers, and that's made you different than a lot of people in your business. And that's
Yeah. So the
my opinion. That's my speculation.
Yeah, and that goes to the question of can anybody do it by just learning, how to approach client interactions or client scenarios, as a problem solver, as a strategist, or is there something that, in a person and a personality type that I definitely would argue that some personality types are going to be better than others. Yeah, I mean, you've got to be an outside of the box thinker. You've got to be somebody that's willing to and able to kind of challenge certain assumptions, right? Because like you could come in to talk about a specific loan scenario or a scenario for a person in real estate, and if you just kind of come locked in, like this is what you do and how you do it, and you're unwilling to kind of look at the big picture and kind of I use the analogy all the time, Jay, of like we need to spread all the pieces of the puzzle out on the table in front of us. I have some ideas I'll tell people, but I want to spread all the pieces of the puzzle out in front of us and just kind of move them around a bit and see where they land, right? And so whether that type of individual who is always inquisitive, always wanting to understand how things work, always wanting to, try to understand others' perspectives and engage in the type of conversation that we engage in. Whether that type of a person is, I would, of course, that person is more likely to, doesn't mean it's impossible for others, right? And sometimes somebody just needs to be around somebody who thinks like that to kind of help them unlock that part. Which goes back to
I
great mentors and things like that.
I asked that because the people I've referred to you have told me those they've referred you to is just such a great feedback of you, just in case anyone listening to this conversation you would never want to talk to you again. Like, yeah, the feedback I've gotten from third parties. Um, so I think there's a connection there.
Yeah, yeah,
Bill, I can't wait to re-listen to this and think through all the points that I was trying to get to that I could make more clear. But you're welcome back, obviously, sooner than later to explore that piece a little bit. I want to go next time a bit more on the Gen Z and the youth and how they're viewing these topics
yeah.
and their opportunities in the coming years. But please, if you're listening to this podcast, go check out our other episodes, the suite of from episode 88 all the way to 903. And please leave us a review on the Culture Matters podcast. It's how it's how we're going to grow the platform. We need reviews and tell the truth. Leave us a review on the Culture Matters podcast so we can keep reinvesting and bringing great conversations, thoughts, and curiosities to you. And we will see you next time on the Culture Matters podcast. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.